A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. Today we are joined by Michael Lebowitz. Michael is the founder and CEO of Big Spaceship. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
It's a privilege to have you on the show. Big Spaceship has actually been in the news a little bit recently. You know, new big partnership, big things happening for you and your team, which is fantastic. So we do really appreciate you carving out a little time to talk to our listeners today about this idea of scaling a creative business. So certainly our listeners who are in a creative industry, or even those executives who are leading creative teams in marketing or what have you, I think are going to get a lot out of today's episode. But before we get into that, maybe you can tell our listeners a little about what you and Big Spaceship are up to these days.
Sure. Well, Big Spaceship is, we're sort of a funny animal in our space. We're sort of equal parts marketing and advertising agency, digital product and service design, and then we also work in sort of cultural insights, data and analytics. And really what makes us, I think, different and what makes me excited to come to work every day is how we're kind of integrating all of those things. And, we're fortunate enough, you mentioned our news. We've just started a great partnership with JetBlue Airlines, working with them on all of their digital consumer touch points. We also work with Google, Converse, Nestle Purina, YouTube. I always forget a few, and it's not to slight them at all. That's a good, a quick overview. And we've been doing it for 17 and a half years. So in digital years, that's probably 3,000 or something.
That's forever. You guys have been around since the dawn of time. So yeah, that's fantastic. And I really think it sort of speaks to your level of expertise. You've seen it from start to finish. And obviously not finished, but from start to where we are today. So let's kind of dive into this idea of scaling a creative business, because I think, people that are listening, there is this, preconceived notion or this conception that, as you get bigger and you may lose that, you may not be as nimble, you may not be able to be as creative, you may lose some things in terms of company culture. But I think you're the person to kind of come on the show and maybe dispel those rumors or give our listeners some advice on how you can prevent that from happening.
This is really one of my passions, and I could talk about it for hours, so it's going to be hard to condense it, but let me sort of try to take a few sort of key points. I think the first and foremost point is to set down and really know and really live by, I should say, really evangelize and really live by closely held values. We have 4 core values that guide the company. And as the world has changed, which, as you pointed out, has changed radically multiple times over, and there's constant small disruptions and fairly regular large disruptions in the space that we work in, our values have kept us anchored. And they're constructed not just to be sort of high-minded statements, but they're really carefully designed to be our rules of the road. Our values very quickly are take care of each other, collaborate inside and out, speak up, and produce amazing work. And while they might feel a little touchy-feely, there's actually really good business behind them, and they're our anchors. They're really what keeps us rooted when there's so much swirl around us. And I say that may sound kind of obvious, but in a world of a creative company and a business that is very much providing consultative services to other businesses. So we're walking into different cultures every day of the week. And it's our job, because we work with very large organizations and enterprises, to not expect them to change their culture for us, but we really need to figure out how we can be elastic and adapt to them, but not so much that we go native. So there's this really interesting tension. And so that's the anchor, and it's a very important one. And it's particularly important as we grow as well, to the primary question. So the other part of it that goes hand in hand is my philosophy on growth is not, I think, a common one, but it's that growth is a side effect, not a goal. I think a lot of people look at growth as the ultimate goal of a company. And I think with some companies that makes sense. But we're such a fundamentally people-driven business where we don't have a product that sells while we're sleeping. We are our product. And so to grow at all costs goes back to what you were saying, which it can really limit your ability to stay nimble, to be that elastic but sort of rigorous and scrappy partner that our clients need from us. And also, you can lose track of your values when you're not acculturating everyone on your team to them in a very sort of intentional and methodical way.
Yeah. It's an interesting point where you had made this point about that there are business philosophies also behind this idea of fostering a culture of creativity. And I know I know that Big Spaceship itself, in terms of its company culture, has actually been the study of a couple of papers or studies from the Harvard Business School. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, 2 case studies from Harvard Business School.
Tell us a little about that. What was kind of the insight into the culture and how you've maintained this creativity even as you've continued to scale? Even how have you maintained your company culture? What is special about it?
Yeah, well, the first case study, it was very much exactly that, on the nose. It was called Big Spaceship, Ready to Go Big? ? And it was rooted around a particular topic, which is that back in late 2007, early 2008, I very quickly reorged the company into cross-functional teams rather than sitting by discipline. We never say department, it's always a discipline. And that's actually another sort of lesson in here, which we could go into, is everything we do is about breaking down boundaries and silos, anything that separates people from each other. So even the word department might seem like a small thing, but we say discipline. It's an area of expertise, not a wall between us. Mm-hmm. So I reorged the company rather than our strategists sitting with other strategists and our account people sitting with account people, designers, technologists, etc. Reorged everybody into physical proximity based on the goal of the team, the goal of the output. So it's something that's done, it's very, very common now. So the case was really studying that shift and questioning how it was possible to scale that way and whether it was possible to scale that way. And I'm happy to announce that all these years later, you can do it, although it requires a lot of work and tweaking to get it to keep working.
Yeah, and being very, I would imagine, being very intentional about it. I mean, you kind of had this goal, you knew what you were going into it, sort of trying to accomplish. It's interesting, the idea of, not having these departments, not having these walls, sort of almost intermingling these different areas of expertise, these people who, like you said, have different disciplines, but allowing them the opportunity to work with other people on other teams. I was at the CTA conf in Vancouver, hosted by Unbounce, just earlier this week, and there was a speaker, Will Reynolds, who had talked about this kind of idea of never stop learning, and part of that means, if you have become an expert on one team, then going on to another team and learning from them. But it's very difficult because you've spent so long developing this area of expertise. You go on to another team, and now you are the low man on the totem pole, and there's a pushback against this because no one wants to feel basically like the dumbest person on the team. And it's not that you're the dumbest person, but you would be brand new. You're learning a new discipline.
Yeah, the structure that we have in place, we don't suffer that. And I think we work against that in a few different ways. One is, that first of our core values, take care of each other. We place a very high value on kindness. And people here genuinely like each other a lot, tolerate each other. We've often said, or I've often said and gone out, on stages giving talks, if you'll forgive a moment of profanity, the slide that always went over best was don't hire assholes no matter how talented.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, no matter how talented they are, they're a net negative on the business. Mm-hmm. And I really have taken that to heart, having made the mistake a few times along the way. And once you build that culture of kindness, you reap real strong business rewards out of it. One of the key things to putting all of those different points of view and backgrounds and expertises on a team is to make everyone accountable to the idea and to the output. So rather than a lot of our peers in our space and adjacent industries who really put creativity in the hands of a few people and implementation and sort of relationship management into everybody else's hands, we say everybody is responsible for the ideas, and how innovation really happens in the world is disparate backgrounds, disparate things bumping up against each other. So if you kind of have the same group and the same skill sets always responsible, you're limiting the opportunity for what might come out of an analyst who looks at the world in a completely different way than a writer, to give an example. And so then if you make your environment one where people feel comfortable volunteering ideas, then really amazing things can happen. So you have to make people comfortable volunteering of themselves, and you have to make sure that people are receptive to ideas that may come out of left field, because those are often the most interesting.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, Michael, I guess what I'd like to do, and I know you've kind of certainly touched on a few actionable ideas, things that our listeners can take away from the episode. But any sort of real world examples, you're leading maybe a creative team, or you're leading a creative agency, or you are in a position to sort of take some lessons and apply those within your team, department, discipline, or company to continue to foster this creativity, to continue to enhance your company culture. Do you have some advice for people that are listening and kind of want to take something with them back to the workplace?
Sure. I mean, it's a lot of this is really easy for me to say, and I want to caveat with that because I'm here and I can kind of internally, at least, I can kind of implement whatever I want. And I know that a lot of people, there's a lot more sort of structure that they have to work their way through and can't just implement something on the fly. I tend to think pretty high level because my job really is to protect the culture of the place and to have the long-term growth strategy. I don't really lead project teams anymore. Mm-hmm. But I can say a couple of things. One is never undervalue the broadest possible inputs into what you're doing. So if you're trying to crack a really challenging problem, it is incredibly valuable to put as many tools on your tinkerer's table as you can possibly get. Have as many dots to connect as possible, and ones that wouldn't seem relevant because there's not a straight line between them. What I recommend to folks who are starting here and who are early in their career is don't just look at industry trade publications, and in fact maybe avoid that, because that's what everybody else has already done. That's what they're thinking. Inhale culture. I'm constantly listening to audiobooks in my car, and podcasts, I should say. I started a monthly movie night here at Big Spaceship because we've got this big central area with bleachers. And I bought one of those sort of old-timey looking popcorn machines, and we program it once a month. I do every other month, and people from the crew are invited to do the ones in between. And I try to pick movies that people haven't seen. They're not supposed to be directly relevant to anything we're working on, but they become points of reference, either just tactically, we're doing a shoot for a particular client and somebody sees a camera move that's really interesting, then great, if it's that sort of that on the nose. But a lot of times it's just opening the mind and letting things come in and not feeling like the only way to achieve creative output in a particular, set of confines is to stay within those confines.
Yeah.
The dots start to connect themselves.
Perfect. Love it. Michael, I think this has been some fantastic content for our listeners. And if any of our listeners are interested in connecting with you or even learning a little bit more about Big Spaceship, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Well, you can visit bigspaceship.com and see a whole bunch of our work and learn a little bit about how we look at the world. And if you want to reach me, the best way is on LinkedIn, Michael Lebowitz, founder and CEO of Big Spaceship.
Perfect. And Michael, one last question: what's the next movie of choice for the Big Spaceship movie night?
Well, it's one that a young guy on the team chose, Children of Men, which I love. Great movie, very, very dark, particularly in these times. So I don't know. Maybe I'll have to make extra popcorn or something.
Well, that's great. Thank you again so much for your time, and we wish you continued success with Big Spaceship.
Thanks, Jonathan. This was great. I appreciate it.
If you're a B2B marketer, we want to feature you on sites like the Huffington Post, Social Media Examiner, and Chief Marketer. Every week, we send out a question related to B2B marketing. We use the responses to those questions to fuel the content we write for really popular websites. So head over to sweetfishmedia.com/questions and sign up today.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.